This evening here to the Cadillac Planning Commission meeting here for August 27th, 2018. If I could, before I ask everyone to join us for the pledge, if you have a cell phone, please turn it off so we don't disrupt the videoing. And having said that, if you could join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Just a minute.
Mr. Coy, are you my go-to call, roll call person?
Gotta
tonight?
stand up to see John, though. Wilkins.
Okay.
Smith.
Yeah.
Peterson.
Yeah.
Bunce.
Here.
Gregg.
Here.
Bauman.
Here.
Fent.
Here.
Putvin.
Yes, here. That too.
Got her. We have a quorum.
John, why don't you stop hoarding the pens and pass a couple of those out of here?
What do you need, sir?
You took all the sharp objects away.
Oh, that must be
For my safety.
Somehow I ended up with it.
Thank you. Well, now we'll see if it works. It does. Life is great.
I have one, I must. Okay, all right. At this time, approval of agenda here for August 27th, 2018.
So moved.
The revised one, I guess.
Second.
I have Joe and
John.
Joe and John, please.
Joe and John.
I like these guys.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of-
Gregg.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Fent.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes. And for all of those in our viewing audience that have not seen us since April 23rd, that is correct. We have not been here since then.
Really hasn't.
So anyway, last meeting was April 23rd, 2018. Approval of those meeting minutes.
I'll move that we.
Mr. Smith and Mr. Bunce.
Okay. Bauman.
Yes.
Fent.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Wilkins. Smith.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Gregg.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Tonight we have, in front of us, we have a public hearing. This public hearing is to consider a request from Cynthia, don't want to kill her last name.
Knitz.
Okay, we'll go with that. And Peter Bueller for a special land use to allow construction of 2-unit duplexes in an R3 district for property fronting Whaley Road. Having read this, Mr. Wallace, are you taking this to this
Yes.
page?
The application centers around the desire to build 2 duplexes. This project is basically involving a parcel of land that Cynthia Knitz is purchasing from Mr. Bueller, but it's subject to the approval of the various boards of the city to see that she can do what she desires to do with the property. That's why you have 2 names applying and why you have Mr. Bueller signing the application as well. So it's just the 2 duplexes. You'll also see reference to a single-family home. That single-family home is a permitted by right use. It's not really the subject of this hearing or action. It's only there to give you a more fuller picture of what's happening on the vacant property that would be purchased. And with that, I'll get into the actual case. Mr. Bueller owns a 3.9 acre site on Whaley Road. Cynthia Knitz wishes to purchase it to do 2 duplexes, each on their own parcel, and then also build a single-family home. And that's site for the single-family home also has a pond on the property. You see on the screen there the actual aerial view of the site, so you can kind of see the odd configuration of the property. It kind of well, it's adjacent to 2 existing duplexes, and then it also kind of wraps around another single-family home or 2 also on Whaley Road. This picture is kind of a view from Whaley Road, kind of showing you just how wooded the site appears. And here's kind of a back portion of the site, showing you that it does, in fact, back against the railroad tracks, and that's also was pertinent in some of the prior meetings regarding the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what is being proposed? 2 duplexes, each one would have its own lot. A third would have the single-family home. The ability to proceed to the Planning Commission was based on their getting a variance for the width to depth ratio. Our ordinance says that you have to have a 1:3. Because of the unique configuration of this lot, it was not possible to get to that 1:3. The State Subdivision Control Act, their standard happens to be 1:4. And so our Zoning Board of Appeals granted a variance allowing them to have up to what the state considers their standard of 1:4. And so you'll see in a subsequent slide a proposed layout showing approximately 120 feet for each of the duplex lots. They want to have some flexibility in that number. They would like to just have your approval that it would be being split into 3 lots, 1 for each duplex, 1 for the single family, with the idea that they would not exceed the 1:4 ratio, which is the standard set by the state. This kind of gives you an idea of the layout. There is an existing duplex here, another duplex that's located next to it. The 2 duplexes would be here, the single-family home here, and this is an existing single-family structure. These shells, these figures, they're actually the scale of what is being proposed, so it kind of gives you an idea of the relationship of the structures to the land. Here's a picture of one of the existing duplexes to give you an idea of its size and character and so forth. And the other duplex, largely similar, 1-story structures, garages together, and you can see the scale of the development. The single-family homes adjacent to and across from the site, you can see again are kind of on the lower end in terms of size, and again appears to be single story or maybe a story and a half. I can't tell with the trees blocking that one, but again probably in scale with the type of development that's being proposed. As you know, and of course I walked through this in a little bit more detail in my staff report, I kind of just shortened that for the purposes of the PowerPoint, but these are the standards that we have to look at, or you have to look at, in terms of weighing in on a vote to say it meets the standards to be approved for a special land use. And one, would it be harmonious with the surrounding property? I think the pictures that were shown and so forth would show that in terms of the scale of the project that it is keeping with the surrounding area. The essential area would not be changed. I don't believe that this proposal would change the essential character of the area by virtue of the proposed development. The use would not interfere with the general enjoyment of adjacent property. There's nothing that's going to be introducing things that would be out of the ordinary for a residential environment. The proposed use, I believe, will represent an improvement to the property and the surrounding area. would not be hazardous to adjacent property or detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of persons or property through the excessive production of traffic, noise, odor, fumes, or glare. I think probably what you will see is impacts that are very much in keeping with what's going on with the surrounding development. The site is presently served by water and sewer, I believe in Whaley Road, so it would not exceed the capacity of the city utilities to be served by existing facilities. The proposed use would not place demands on the utilities beyond capacity, and the proposed use is consistent with the intent and purpose of the ordinance and the currently adopted long-range comprehensive plan. I think okay. I thought I had placed the pictures. I think they're in your in the staff report, showing you the character of the facades that are being proposed for the use, and I think they're of equal or superior quality to what you're seeing in the existing development around the site. And so I do have a recommended motion when that time comes after the public hearing. Certainly you would not be obligated to word it exactly what I have here. I tried to propose the motion so that there would be some flexibility. They've committed to having a duplex each on its own parcel, so I think it's important to say that we keep constant with the intent of the ZBA decision for the variance, that however the lots are split, that it not exceed a 1-to-4 ratio, that the elevations proposed be used in the project, and if for some reason there might be a change to those, that those changes would be at least brought back for an administrative review by the zoning administrator to see that they're on par with what was proposed of what you reviewed for this case. And then the last one I don't see any need for, but I have it in there just because it's one of the standards that you have the option to take advantage of if you felt that there was anything needed to preserve the natural state of the site. You could put a condition on that. I don't think they tend to clear cut the site, and probably are only going to clear the development parcels, the development's area. And so I don't know that there's really a need to impose that, but I put it in there just because it is your prerogative. So with that, I would leave it to you to open the public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Wallace before I open public hearing?
Does it abut the current special use on Whaley that is there already?
Yes.
Okay.
At this time, unless Cynthia wants to add anything? We're good?
Pretty much covered it.
Okay, perfect. Always give you your right. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. So if anyone is here to speak in favor of this, please come forward, state your name, write down your address. And you don't have to. Okay, all right. Ready, moving right along. If there is anyone here to speak against this proposed development, please also come forward. And there being nobody, okay, we will at this time go ahead and close public hearing. Board will kick this around. Okay, gentlemen.
I think this would be an improvement to the area, and some of the trees that are out close to the road will be
Cleaned up.
well to be gone.
Agreed. But I don't want to see a clear cut either, because
No, that was,
a lot of your stuff, and it'd be.
can we ask
silly
her
to do
questions?
so.
I wish she would have come up and talked so we could ask some
Oh, we can ask
questions.
her questions. We can ask her questions
Okay.
from right here, and you can sit right there if you like, because
Oh, okay.
we'll just be
Sure.
informal-ish. That's okay.
You don't intend on going back and clearing that whole lot out,
No,
correct?
my goal is to keep as many trees, especially towards the railroad tracks, just to keep the railroad noise down. So, because I plan on living there, so.
Here you go. In the single one, or
Pardon me?
in the single one, or
In
duplex?
in the single one. Yeah, I have a 4-bedroom house now, I need to downsize, which is where this all started, because there's nothing in Cadillac to go, so. Yeah, so that's why I'm proposing this, because I've looked for more than a year to find a place to run.
And there's also other duplexes in the area that look halfway decent, they're well kept, so.
Agreed?
And they're pretty much tucked into the woods, you know, as
Yeah.
you go by, they don't jump out at you anyway, and so, you know, you,
That's-
Probably maybe the
that's-
keeping of that.
That's the look that I want.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
that's the way it is, yeah. And then there's that one spot that you look at.
Right.
I guess if you end up with anything like your pictures, they look very attractive.
Thank you.
Good with all that? Okay.
John, don't do such a good job anymore. You guys do such a good job, we don't have any questions.
Asking you questions. All right.
Called short meetings.
All in favor of that.
All in favor of that? We can do that. Okay. So I'd entertain, she kind of answered your stuff and stuff.
Let's get back to the
zoning.
trees for a minute.
Yep,
Anybody
trees,
wanna-
go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if we should put it in there, but clear cutting is something that I would not want to see, but
She's indicated she doesn't
not
want to
gonna
do,
do
but
it.
sure, if you want to cover bases, sure.
John, is there a good way to phrase, if I may, is there a good way to phrase that in the motion such that it would, meet what the applicant has noted anyways, and that we could simply make as a requirement of the special use?
Depends on the nature of your concern. Obviously, she's expressed she doesn't desire to clear cut. Maybe a percentage of the woodlot area might be a way to go. That maybe perhaps other than the building site itself, that maybe not more than 20% of the site be cleared of its woodland vegetation, be in addition to the building site itself. That would allow the creation of an area for patios, gatherings, and still keep the wooded nature. And she's indicated she wants to keep that to buffer the railroad anyway, so I think that would be one reasonable approach to do it.
One other question, can she builds these duplexes, can she build more on the same property, or is it kind of locked that she can't?
Given the setbacks, once these parcels are created, it'll pretty much be locked into these 3 dwelling units.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Coy.
Just, I wanted to say this site, obviously with the railroad tracks and that what we're discussing here is some of what was discussed with the zoning board of appeals. And it's kind of interesting because in R3 zone district, the minimum lot size is 6,000 square foot. This site's got over 157,000 square feet.
Wow.
These are going to be huge.
They are.
And the R3 zone district, so let's just say you split it in thirds. I mean, you're looking at 3 lots, potentially 50,000 square foot each. And the R3 zoned districts also allow, and I'm not positive, I believe you can cover up to 35% of a site with buildings. So, if you do get into percentages, I would ask that you not do something that conflicts with the ordinance for the R3. But, I can't imagine what she's looking at that, this being a 15,000 square foot duplex. So that's all I'm suggesting is, we not get the standard too out of whack with what the ordinance allows for an R3 zone district.
50% be satisfactory or 40%?
I couldn't imagine even wanting to mow 50% of that
Right.
acreage.
I want to make it comfortable for her to do
Sure,
what she
yeah,
wants.
Sure. I mean, and true, when you get near the railroad tracks and when you get near the lowland area, I don't call it a pond so much, but I joked with the ZBA that, I certainly did not walk the site because I didn't want to get ate up by mosquitoes, But, so there's some unique things with the topography, the railroad tracks that, potentially a huge portion of that site potentially might not even be considered buildable. I don't know. I'm not an engineer.
So your concern is as to the buildable space as opposed to the amount of trees that remain?
My concern is a condition that conflicts with the ordinance.
And the ordinance limits the amount of buildable
The ordinance
site.
says how much square footage you can cover with a building before you need a variance. And I'm pretty sure it's 35% for an R3. And obviously, you get some of these non-conforming lots, which this is not, on some small lots within the city. And, homes get pretty close to filling that 35%. Homes, garages, et cetera, That's all, just I don't want a condition that potentially would conflict with the ordinance for, that zone district.
And a limitation on cutting trees wouldn't impact that, would it?
Well, if you made it so strict, then she's going to have a smaller footprint that
Well, John, what got me to jump up was John mentioned 20%.
But
Yeah.
that,
Well,
I said 50%.
That was in
that
addition to the
was
development space.
outside the buildable space.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wasn't counting the buildable space.
Yeah.
That's all. Just, I don't want a conflict with the
No, and I
ordinance.
think if, in addition to the development space or the buildable space as permitted by the ordinance, some
Yes.
reasonable number makes sense to me.
Is there any
I just something dawned on me as he brought that up. It appears like there is garage space with the units, but have you thought about whether you'd be adding accessory buildings to these lots?
That I hadn't thought of. I know on the single-family home, I will put a garage.
If you wanted to make it so that she didn't have to come back and amend the special use, if you wanted to give a certain amount of additional square footage beyond the
Storage
request.
shed of some sort.
Right.
A pole barn
Oh.
for plow and lawnmower and
Well, your plan one has garages. Is that going to be actually what you're going to put up there?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Your plan one
Uh-huh.
has garages in between.
Correct.
That is what you're planning on putting in there?
Yes.
So-
The single family home does not have a garage.
Okay.
And there will be a garage attached to that.
That's not technically part of the special use request, correct? The single family?
No, the single family is not.
So she can do whatever.
She can do the normal things that she can do in that zoning district on that single-family lot. It's only included to show you kind of the adjacencies of what's happening on both sides. Do you have an idea of square footage that
Yeah.
you would want to have the flexibility to have on each of the duplex lots?
Yeah.
That's why I asked if she was going to build in the backside, because you start looking at these
Is that
lots.
like a pole barn or an out structure?
Right.
It probably wouldn't be bigger than 24 by 24, because it's not going to need to house it. And I have a 30
Okay.
by 40 pole barn now that's way too big for anything.
That's 576 square feet at 24 by 24. So if you wanted to allow each of the special use parcels to have 500,
Thought she just wanted one on her own.
Yeah.
Right.
But you want to put it in there so she could have three of them back there, one on her own and then one on each one of the parcels?
I
Right.
won't have one on the, I'll have a garage on the single family home,
Okay.
but it's some type of storage unit for each of the duplexes, because they're not gonna have a basement, probably. It's, obviously, I'm gonna need a lawnmower and something to plow with and that kind of stuff, so.
and that also then sometimes, and you might want to specify where on the lot that could be, because that affects the aesthetics too, right? But I think it also keeps things from being stored in the yard and becoming unsightly if they're stored out in front of the garage, which sometimes you see. So it's just maybe another way to protect the aesthetics. And of course, you know, you could specify the placement of those additional buildings should they ever be built.
Based on our picture, it's gonna be behind the duplexes,
Yeah.
Correct.
which is plenty of space.
What size do you want us to put in this? Cindy, what size would you like us to put in there for those storage buildings behind, 24 by 24?
24 by 24.
576 square feet on
Right,
each one.
right.
For each one.
And that would be optional, should the eventual, whoever owns those decide to do that at some point.
That's when I wish we had Benson here. He always was really good at these.
I'm glad to make the motion, Mr. Chair, if you're...
Sure.
All right.
Entertain that, Joe?
I would move that the Planning Commission approve the special land use permit application by Ms. Cynthia Canitz and Mr. Peter Bueller to allow for the construction of 2 duplexes and the potential for a storage building on each parcel on parcel number 10-100-00-029-000, subject to the following conditions. 1, that each duplex be on its own parcel, that each parcel be permitted an additional building up to 576 square feet for storage purposes, that no parcel created will exceed a width to depth ratio of 1:4, that any major changes to the elevation of the buildings or to size of the buildings be reviewed by the zoning administrator. Additionally, as the last condition, propose that 80% of the trees outside of the buildable space be retained. Sound all right?
Sounds downright marvelous.
Yeah, I was looking for Benson.
I know. You just got somebody to take his place.
There we go.
And if she builds these other 2 sites, that doesn't affect the, she can take down trees in those sites if she needs to, right? Based on what he said. Those 2 storage buildings, she goes around.
Yeah, that would be counted as part of the buildable space. So that wouldn't count against the 20%.
Can we ask for a comment from the applicant, if that's suitable? Cindy? Cindy, did that sound all right to you?
Well, the 80%, I'm just trying to figure out tree-wise, actually, Mr. You probably know better as far as trees go. As far as building lots and storage, is 80% a workable number? As far as, you know the trees much better than I do.
The 80% would only be after you've cleared what you need
Right.
to build.
Right, so you can,
Oh, okay.
you can clear the site for the,
Okay.
for the duplex, you can clear the site for the accessory structure, and then of what's left, you would retain 80% of what's left.
Is that?
Are the driveways included with this footage?
Yeah,
It would be in my motion, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Patios,
A buildable site generally includes a driveway and,
sidewalks.
you know, some sort of a front yard, et cetera.
What is
You know,
the
if the zoning ordinance allows for up to 35%
Did a drive down.
coverage with buildings, you know, you're now looking at, you know, that's leaving a lot of trees. 80% of the non-buildable. I believe it's leaving a lot of trees.
Mhm.
Is that within the ordinance though?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I think I'd like to jump it up to like 30% or something, just to, so she's not,
So down to 70.
Down
I
to
think
70, yeah.
70 is the better way to, yeah, I'd accept that as a
I'm
friendly
fine with
amendment.
that.
Amend your
70,
motion.
70%.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
Give a little cushion.
yeah.
good.
I may need a second.
Second.
Motion.
Mr. Smith?
You better.
We have a second.
There.
Bauman,
Yes.
Bunce,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Fent,
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
You're welcome to stay for our rest of our stuff.
Thank you for the invitation, but I'm gonna go home.
Should
I
put it
haven't made
last.
the
I should have put that as a stipulation. You have to stay with
It's my
us.
fault, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
And then when you get to the point where you want to figure out the exact splits, you would just have to work with Mike,
Okay.
just to make sure that what you're proposing meets the standards of the approval.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Next time, Joe, say, okay.
Yeah, my fault.
Yeah.
Rookie mistake.
We don't get many people.
Can't let him go.
Yeah.
Lock the door.
Okay, new business. We have a presentation by Phil Siebert to present here on the Cadillac Castle, the new senior apartment complex proposed for South Mitchell Street. All we get to do is listen, so that's good. And having read that, Mr. Wallace, so
Just a few comments. The zoning district in this area is B3, which allows for this project to proceed under the special use permit process. It also has received some preliminary council review, but not as it relates to the site plan. It was going to be a pilot project, which the council has signed off on, which has allowed it to proceed to the Planning Commission for its review and approval. My own opinion as the Community Development Director is that this is a very needed project to drive up density in the downtown area, that it will help support many of our existing businesses, whether it be the retail stores or restaurants and so forth in the downtown. And it's a nice counterpart to the Cadillac Lofts, which is adding about 74 apartment units to our downtown. And so it's allowing us to build a density that will allow, I believe, for a more successful downtown for Cadillac. So we're excited to see it happen. Myself personally, I attended a presentation or a showing of their project in Clare, Michigan, and it's a project very similar to this, and it was a impressive building, very neat, orderly, well-designed. Got a chance to go through the units, a couple of units. The folks there were very inviting to let us walk through the units and seemed to be quite content with the units that they were living in there. So everything to date has been very positive. Mr. Siebert has been working with our utilities department and our fire department to try to get the site plan to meet all their standards in terms of the fire engine radiuses and movements that they need to make with the fire equipment. Likewise, Mr. Siebert's working with our utilities department to try to figure out a solution to some odd storm sewer configurations on and near the site, and so they're working through some of that, but I think they'll be able to do that in the very near future, and I believe it's his goal to set up to have this project come before you for approval for the special use at your next month's meeting. They will have to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals on just a few minor issues. The height is just slightly higher than what's allowed in the B3. If it were the B2 district, I think it would have a higher elevation, which wouldn't even be an issue. They're looking for an ability to have a slight variation should final details dictate that they might have to get a little bit closer to the property line on some of the parking, the carports, but that will not exceed 5 feet, which would still leave a 15-foot setback on all the parking structures for the site. And I think there was one more issue Do you recall which it was?
Had to do with the square footage of lot coverage related to covered buildings. As I've mentioned, the R3, you have, I believe it's up to 35%. In the B3, you've only got 25% lot coverage with covered buildings. So the actual building, from what and I'm going to actually wander out there and look at this, the actual building, I believe, was going to take up roughly 22% of the site. The parking was not an issue. There were no issues there. But if you then use carports, that then counts towards the covered building percentage for that zoning district. So that is part of the variance application, is to have that lot coverage with covered buildings, have a variance with that so that some carports can be created versus just entirely open parking.
And because it is a senior development project, the parking requirements is only one space per unit, and then whatever additional number is needed for the employee count on the site. And so there's no issues with meeting the parking numbers. The addition of the carports, I believe, is a good thing and will, I believe, add value to the units and to the development. And obviously, it would reduce the need for people to be out scraping their cars and so forth. So, to date, everything has. While there's been some design challenges, it all seems to be moving in the right direction, and should end up producing a project that's quite beneficial to the downtown.
Nice. Any questions before we open it up here to the gentleman? Bill?
That roof issue, is that stormwater runoff sort of thing? Covered areas?
The percent coverage, it's probably related to an aesthetic for the look of the site. Of course, the closer you get to downtown, the more we've allowed more almost kind of full types of coverages. And while this isn't in the heart of downtown, it's certainly on the downtown fringe. And I think when you see the project, it will certainly look like it fits for the area that it is in.
Okay. Anything else for staff, or we can have Phil?
Which building are they taking down, that house or extras?
It would be I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, but it'd be the house where the tattoo parlor was.
There's a building in the bottom right-hand corner.
And then what was Hagstrom's? What about that building? Or is that not included?
I don't believe that's included.
Ready?
Yep.
Phil, you're up.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Geez, I'm going to be the only name on your list here tonight.
Well, that's okay.
Is that the naughty list or the
Yeah.
nice list?
I hope it's the nice list. Yeah, thank you. So for the record, my name is Philip Seibert.
Sorry I killed you.
That's all right. I've been called a lot of things, believe me.
Well, I don't do it that.
I reside at 608 East Bluegrass Road in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. So,
We need to say that, we just keep that all private, so that's okay, but that's all right.
so yeah, just a little bit about me. I've got in the affordable housing business in 1986 when the Reagan administration passed the Tax Reform Act. And back in 1986, nobody understood the program, including me, to be candid with you. But I've been, that was sort of the niche that I carved out in the housing business. I love to develop affordable housing, especially affordable senior housing. And by affordable senior housing, I mean there are basically two requirements under this program. One, you have to be 55 years of age, which I think some of us here this evening probably qualify. I know I do. So it's 55 years of age, or if you have a spouse, that spouse has to be 50 years of age. So one of you have to be 55 and the other has to be at least 50. That's the first requirement. The second requirement is generally that you have to be at a income of 60% of the median income for the county in which this project is located. I have a 2017 figure, and for one person, that income amount would be $23,460, and for a two-person household, that number would be $26,820. So if you and your spouse want to move in here, your income from all sources, at least for 2017, and I'm sure it's gone up a little bit in 18. It's tagged to the median income of the county, so it's $26,820.
I don't know, are pets allowed?
I'm sorry?
Pets allowed?
We do have a pet policy, generally, and I might add that I own and operate these projects across the state. I don't personally manage them. I hire a company called KMG Prestige. They're based in Mount Pleasant. Back in 1991, I actually had an interest in the management company. I got out of the management business because it just takes too much time. I wanted to be a developer. I wanted to create projects across the state. And so I hired KMG to manage these properties. They manage about 26,000 units now in the Midwest. They've grown considerably since I got out of that company. But I know all the principals. Actually, one of the owners of that company started there when she was 18, and I've worked with her since the day she started. So I have a very strong relationship with management. They know me very well as an owner, and if I happen to be in the Cadillac area, I guarantee I'm going to drive through the parking lot of this property. And if I see something I don't like, somebody's going to get a phone call. That's just how I am, and then they know that. So I'm very particular about the curb appeal of my properties. I'm very particular about how they're being managed. So this particular property, and I've sort of created a little brand name. This is going to be called Cadillac Castle, okay? Because the Clare property is called Clare Castle, and then last year I actually built one in St. John's, and we call that Castle St. John's. A little bit different, but we sort of like that tag name. It's just, I don't know what there is about it, but it's been very successful. Both Clare and St. John's are 100% occupied, have been since 30 days after we opened them. And so just to kind of give you a perspective of what the Clare building looks like, and this is a 24-unit building. St. John's is a 30-unit building, and we changed the roof style a little bit in St. John's and put a hip roof on it, and the hip roof looks great as well. I like this gable roof a little better, but again, it's sometimes you get into cost issues where you got to change some things, and when we get right down to the final numbers of the project. But that's very similar to what this project's going to look like, and all we've simply done is stretch that building. If you look at that layout, I don't know which one's easier for you guys to see, but what we've got is essentially 4 units on each end. This is the first floor. So on the first floor, in the middle of the building, we have the main entry, and we're going to have some common space, which typically includes sort of a living room type setting where we'll have a fireplace, a couch, and a reading area, and then there's a community room. And we haven't really fully designed that in this building yet, because we've stretched this building to include 10 units on the first floor, and then 12 units per floor on 2, 3, and 4, for a total of 46 units. So when you walk in the front door, you're basically going to feel like you're walking into a really sort of grand living room with a nice fireplace and a big screen TV, and then we'll have some offices for the leasing agent. And then the other side of that, we'll have this community room with a full-service kitchen and tables where they can have potlucks and those sorts of functions. And then, of course, there's, restrooms on the first floor for the public as well. And then once you get up on the second and third floor, you've got all units. You've got a little furnace area that services that corridor, but the rest of the space is basically units. So in kind of sort of a nutshell, and not to get too complicated, what we're doing now is preparing to submit an application to the State Housing Authority. It's a very competitive process. I became convinced after, I believe it was the county actually did a market study for the housing needs, or there was a housing needs assessment that was completed by a fellow by the name of Kelly Murdoch, who's out of Ovid, Michigan. He's a market analyst. Kelly and I have worked together for years, and he told me one night he was coming up here to do a presentation, and he said, I ought to come up and listen, and I did. And after reading his study, I became convinced that there was a very good market here for independent, and this is independent senior living. This is not assisted living. This is not a nursing home. You have to be ambulatory. It's independent. There is no subsidy that comes to the project from the federal government. Okay? But what we do get and what we apply for are tax credits. Okay? And the State Housing Authority allocates those tax credits. We have to compete for that. So we're doing things like, we got the tax abatement ordinance approved. We're coming to the ZBA next month, hopefully to get some variances approved. And if we're successful there, we're going to come back before this board for formal approval. My application is due on October 1st. So we've been sort of scrambling on this project. Haven't had a whole lot of time, but we're doing what we can, because they only have applications 2 times a year, October 1 and April 1. I didn't want to wait till April. I wanted to get in this application round, and it will be January or February before we know if we get an allocation of credit. If we're not successful in October, my intent is to resubmit in April. So I love this site. It's close to the downtown core. It's within walking distance of the pharmacy and grocery store, the parks, the common
Cadillac
Commons, all that stuff really helps in our application process, because it's based upon sort of walkability and the amenities that surround this site. So this is really a pretty good site for us, and I landed on it fairly quickly. We had one other site we were considering, but this one provides us enough room. It provides a through access area from Mitchell back to Aspen. We are going to put, we typically build 1 carport per unit. These are all going to be 2-bedroom units, unless there's something unforeseen that comes up in the layout of the building. But I like to build 2-bedroom units because, candidly, whether it's a single person or an elderly couple, most of them have grandkids, and most of them love to have those grandkids come and spend a night or a weekend, what have you. Or they make it a sewing room, something. They always want that space. I rarely build 1-bedrooms in senior facilities anymore. I've got enough of them around the state. And it's kind of ironic, because when I started in this business, that's all we built was 1-bedrooms. The logic was, 1-bedrooms, 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 but that's shifted. So I'm pretty excited about this project. I've done a lot of projects in outstate Michigan and rural communities. I grew up in a little town called Elsie, Michigan, down by Owasso and St. John's. If there's not much there today, there's a lot less than when I grew up, but I do like outstate Michigan, rural areas. I've been in Cadillac many times over my life. I know a fair number of folks up here. I like the community. You've got a strong, vibrant downtown, and we hope we can contribute to that. And I honestly believe in my heart that this will be a great project for your downtown corridor. And I'm convinced we're already getting calls on this project from people who are interested in renting. We're actually keeping a list and taking people's names and phone numbers. We're already getting calls, which is a true indicator of what my gut instinct was about this market. So I don't know with that. There's not a whole lot more I can tell you. It's a complicated process. I don't know why I continue to do it other than I love to create projects. I tell people it's a disease. I'm going to be 65 next month. I don't have any plans to retire. I got a young son who's in his mid-30s who's working with me now. You'll get a chance to meet him next month. He's really taken hold of this concept and this idea, and I love watching him succeed. So I'm going to stick around probably for another 10 years and see how many more of these I can create. We've got 3 projects we're putting in, one in here in Cadillac. We're submitting an app in Kalamazoo, and then we've got another one in Grand Rapids that we're resubmitting. We missed it by 4 points in the April round, so we're going to put that one back in. That's a 50-unit senior, and we've got an 80-unit deal in Kalamazoo that we're putting in. So we're busy. I don't have a big staff. It's my son and I and a couple of consultants, but we've worked together for 20 years. We understand the game and what needs to be done, and we're fairly confident we're going to have a pretty competitive application for this project. There's no guarantees, never is, but it depends to some degree on how many applications come in the next round. So. Anyways, if we don't succeed in October, we'll go back at it in April and see if we can't make it happen. So with that, if you got any questions, I'm happy to.
I do. Is it going to be apartments have a separate laundry facility, or will it be a general coin out?
You know, we used to build the projects where we had a laundry on, say, the 4th floor, but today, every unit has its own washer and dryer. 2-bedroom, bath and half, sometimes 2 baths, depending on the layout of the unit. Some of our units are laid out where they're sort of a split unit, where the kitchen, dining, living is in the middle. Then you have a bedroom and a bathroom on each side. And we've found that there's a segment of the market out there where there's a couple of widows that want to live together and sort of have their own space and their own bathroom. So we've created a layout where that can work, and we've found that to be fairly successful. So it'll be a mix of, the end unit layouts are different than, the middle units that you see in the building. So there's a mix of various layouts, typically 2 to 3 different floor plans, and they're all in that 750 to 850 range in square feet on a 2-bedroom unit.
The age 55 requirement, how secure is that, or how hard is that? Can it be changed at all, or
No,
is that
it's a hard rule. And again, one of the reasons that I use KMG Prestige Management Company is we have to continue to monitor, and we go through an audit every year with the State Housing Authority. They'll come in, they'll spot audit the files, because the problem is if I rent to somebody who doesn't meet the age or income requirement, the IRS can then actually come in and recapture some of the tax credits that they've allocated to the project, which the investor who bought the tax credits isn't going to be very happy about. So it's a hard and fast rule. The only way it's going to change is if Congress amends the program. So it's hard and fast. And the other thing that I'll mention to you, just so you sort of understand, I build these assets for the long term. I'm in this thing for a minimum 30 years. Or I should say my children will be, because I'm 60. I'll be 65 next month. But the rules of the program are that you have an initial compliance period of 15 years. And then the Housing Authority makes us sign a waiver and agree to an additional extended period of 15 years. So there's an actual regulatory agreement that's recorded with the Register of Deeds, much like a warranty deed. We have to take it and have it recorded. It's of record. And it lays out essentially how many units we're going to have. We'll have some units at 30% of median income. We'll have some units at 40, some at 50 or 60, and we're going to have a spattering of market units. We can get points on the application if we can have up to 20% of the units at market rate, where there's no restriction on income, but there is a restriction on the age. It's the same 55. This is a, quote, senior facility. But to be honest with you, I would tell you that the average age of our residents are probably in the 70s.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
If I were to survey all my projects, we have some folks that just like the carefree living. We have some snowbirds who, you know, lock the door in November and come back in April. Well, if they're fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Sure.
Most of our folks can't, but we have some that do.
So I take it has an elevator.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And we generally, when you get off the elevator on each floor, we have a little different colored paint on each floor.
Hey, just in case.
There's a reason for that.
Where am I?
It just sort of helps with that cognitive memory issue, so.
Yeah, memory circle.
Please, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about being Cadillac. I think it's going to be a great project. I just keep my fingers crossed, and we're working hard to make our application as absolutely competitive as we can make it.
So have you acquired all the lots you need to?
I have land control for, an extended period of time. We have one owner who has 6 lots in there that we control, and then the old tattoo shop was and that's up here.
That's right. About
Right here.
Right.
And then this is the Willow
Yeah.
parcel, and then the Dollar General is just north of us.
No, I'm just thinking what it looks like coming down the hill and coming into the south part of Cadillac. This will be a definite eye catcher from what I've seen,
Yeah.
which is important at this point.
Yeah, we've been really working with John and the utility folks. We've been playing with the site plan. I've got a version where the building's up here on the north side of the site, the parking's on the south. We've got a low area up here on the north side that I've just decided in my own mind I want to move that building south because we haven't done soil borings yet. We're going to do that. We've got to do environmental borings. We're going to do all that stuff. But we're trying to get to the point to achieve what we need to get the application in. And because we've got a short fuse on the time frame there. So, but we'll do all those sorts of things this fall once we get the application in, because there's quite a waiting period between the time you submit and the time they actually go through and score all the projects. And we'll know after about 30 days how competitive our application is, because what they'll do is they'll issue a list, and we'll share that with John and Marcus. They issue a list of what applications came in, where they're at, and what the preliminary self-scores are. We have to self-score it. And we'll know fairly quick if we've got a pretty good shot, because they give you an opportunity to withdraw the application actually and get some of your money back. Because we have a fair amount of dollars invested in just putting an application together. But, you know, like I said, generally, I don't withdraw. We've been at it a while. We sort of know what we need to do to be competitive. So I'm confident, but I don't want to be overconfident because you just don't know. You just don't know. Anyways, with that, we'll hopefully see you next month, depending on the ZBA and, you know. And if you're through Claire between now and next month, it's on 4th. I can't remember the other street to the,
Yeah, I can't either.
look for the water tower, sort of on the south end of town. I think our site manager, her name is Penny Tickle. She's there 2 afternoons a week. I believe it's Tuesdays and Fridays, if I'm not mistaken. But if you're through there, you're welcome to stop, knock on the door, introduce yourself, and she can give you, you know, the nickel tour. Or you can just drive through or drive by, whatever you.
So, down the main drag, south past the donut shop.
Hang a right on 4th Street. If you're coming in from, if you're southbound on the main drag, I think it's the second light, it's 4th Street. Hang a right, come west, and you'll see the building. You'll drive right by it. Or if you're in St. John's, we're on Sprinkle and, yeah.
One of the
remember.
taller buildings in town, both places.
It's 1 block east of the main drag in downtown St. John's. If you're through there, very similar buildings, difference is a hip roof. Very tight site, I might add there. We put 30 units on 0.6, 0.7 acres. There is no grass.
Will there be green space on this one?
Yes, yeah. You know, we'll have green space along both streets, in behind the building. We'll have some in and around the building, some landscaped areas. We got to get that landscape plan too for next week. And then some along the north boundary. I don't know what that exact percentage is. I don't think he's got that on his plan. But we'll have that for you. The lot is 1.36 acres. The building footprint is 12,847 square feet. So our lot coverage, quote, including the carports, is like 37.4%. So the carports throws us over a bit, but I gotta tell you, at 55, you sure as hell don't wanna go out there and scrape your window. Cold February morning. I don't, I can tell you that. So, and we like the carports. It does add another security thing to the site itself, so, you know.
It's a carport, not a door.
Oh, it's carport.
Okay.
They're not garages, they're carports. I can bring pictures of that next month as well.
Yeah, I mean, what do we got? Carports. Kirtland's got
Kirtland, yeah.
carports.
These aren't the old mansard type, they're a little more modern. Carport structures, Oxford is who we use. They're just busier than cat on a hot tin roof right now. I mean, getting those guys to, you know, you get an order in and you're probably 8-9 months out before delivery. And they've really, you know, honed the installation process. You know, they used to drill those holes and pour the cement through the pavement. Well, then you had problems with the pavement even up around the concrete. Now they got a pylon system where they actually drive them right down through the asphalt and then they weld the, it's a much better system, much better. Yeah, they've really perfected it. So, anyways, I'll be quiet so you all can.
Is 9th Street paved? Or Aspen Street, sorry.
Aspen, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Haven't been down in a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there would be,
Like
si-
it all the time.
there were-
Oh, okay. Should have asked Dave.
That's right.
the project has sidewalks both on Mitchell and on Aspen, and the sidewalks will run through the driveways.
That's not there.
Main Street does be the only, is there any other sidewalk down Aspen?
No.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions yet here for Phil? I think it sounds impressive.
Thank you.
Well, fill a niche and
Thank you.
it's not your first rodeo, so.
No.
sounds
But I like it.
you covered all the bases on the details, really. So, awesome.
Great. We'll look forward to seeing you next month. You're gonna let me know on the date.
Right, and yeah, then we got to work on setting up the right date for next month's meeting for the Planning Commission. I think we might have to do a special because I think you had some issues about it being too close to the submittal date.
I don't know what the date is for the regular meeting. Is it, it's like the end of the month, isn't it?
The 25th, I bet.
Yeah.
The 25th.
My application,
4th is our last Monday, and so.
24th.
Would that work?
You know, let me check with my consultant. I think that will work. I
Okay.
think that will work. It's a little tight, but we actually have to have the formal approval from the Planning Commission in the application packet. So, you know, as long as you can process that, as long as we don't have an issue on the 24th that requires me to come back, that's what we were a little concerned about, because that really cuts it tight. 'Cause
No, we should have a vote that night, and we probably could draft a letter that the chairman could sign, you know,
it'd be
indicating.
great if I could take that with me, because at that point, we're going to be wrapping up the application and just slide it in. Oh. Anyways, thank you. I'll be
Very
quiet.
good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good luck on the application.
Thank you.
Okay. And new business, old business, none. Board member comments, anybody?
Completion date on Lake Street and the farmer's market, we got any?
I was gonna bring it up.
Well,
Doesn't seem to be moving.
Cass Street was supposed to be paved today, but with the heavy rains, it wasn't. It looks like it might be moved to Wednesday.
Supposed to get bad rain then, too.
Yep.
And then the plan is to put base coat on Cass, open the street up, let it function until they're ready to put final coat on the market. And then they might close it down for just one more day when they do the whole thing, so everything's got its final coat all at the same time. But they wanted to open Cass up while they're still finalizing the market. The market's supposed to be done at the end of next month. That's the date that the contractor gave us last week, his updated final version. So we'll hope that that's the last update.
Yeah.
But at least it'll get better when the road's back open, you know, while we're waiting for the completion of the market.
We were discussing before the meeting, the Cadillac
Lofts.
loss. If we all understood that right, which we thought we did, that G&D technically didn't have to move right away, but yet, I know Mr. Kurtzman has been talking to the people currently that have the automotive place, because that's where he was going to be moving. And I thought he had plenty of time to stay where he was without having to move, but
That's been the discussion. In fact, the timing of the demolition is all centered around that theory, that the grocery store building would come down, and the insurance office would come down, but G&D would stay. They would bring in the one driveway off of Shelby to continue to service G&D. And so everything I've been hearing would support what you said you thought was the plan. Now, that said, I don't know where they are in final negotiations, but some of this effort on the other site might be precautionary in case they don't reach a decision. But I was at a meeting where G&D's attorney was present, and she thought that the negotiations were going well, so I haven't picked up on any information that would say they're now going to be forced early off the site. But again, I might not have the most recent information, but as of maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, the word I was getting that it was looking good at that point in time.
Do they have plans of starting this year at all?
My understanding is the only thing that would start this year would be demolition and the restoration of the site to make sure that the maneuverability for customers for G&D would be suitable. And that would also include the dismantling of the clock tower and storage at a city facility while it waits to be placed over on the trailhead site.
So which automotive place that G&E was looking at? Is that just down the street?
The old Wagner building.
Oh, okay.
What are they doing?
Barbie and
They're moving or?
Howard, well, they will if Paul wants that
Oh.
building, because Paul bought the building,
Oh, okay.
senior. So,
Is that the Mercury dealer?
the
Okay.
old Ford, right, where Widener Motors was,
Yes.
where Canfield's is currently.
Mhm.
Are they gonna move someplace else, or they? I don't
I don't know what their options are. Yeah, so I was just curious. Any additional upgrades on our Cadillac Junction that we spent many hours here on?
Nothing other than they remain in negotiations, which direction those are heading. I hear bits and pieces that it's looking more like a commercial complex will be allowed in some fashion out there, but I'm not hearing anything on whether it'll be in the city or not in the city. So I guess almost weekly or every 2 weeks when the council meets, they get updates. So I don't know how often they're meeting in negotiations, but there are talks ongoing in terms of how that might get resolved.
Okay. Just seems sad. Okay. Any other board member comments this evening? All good? Any other communications? Probably not, or Mr. Walsworth told us. Public comments, we have none of that. And no other business, so if everybody's good, we're gone.